welcome back to True Crime with me, Emma Kenny. If you've stumbled across this channel and you like crime and consistency and you haven't listened to me before, well, once you have, make sure that you come back and subscribe, because I literally religiously release content on a Wednesday and a Sunday. Same time, same place. Come and join me for a live chat. It's brilliant. Got an amazing community of people who join for the premieres. Kenny's crime cult is growing. I love it. Some people on Twitter are like, oh my God, I can't believe it. She's actually calling herself a cult. This is not acceptable. Do people have senses of humour? Did we have a sense of humour up until like 2019-ish and then it all just went wrong? Kenny's crime cult forever. I've even got merch that literally states that. If you want to be in it, get yourself some merch. You're in it anyway, just by watching. But like I said, if it's your first time and you like it, give me a subscription. Get some notes down there, telling me what you think in the comments, and also give me a thumbs up. And if you do like my merch, look, I'm wearing a hoodie. Bang to Right's favourite saying in the world. So you can also follow the link if you do fancy any of the merch that I've got. The merch is ever expanding because we create it ourselves. So there'll be some new slogans coming because I have quite a few of them. Also, big shout out to my Patreon followers. Thank you very much. I appreciate you massively. As I say every time, it helps me to make better content and it means that I can just obsess a little bit more with the research and so on and so forth, which makes my life better because I know I'm getting things right and doing justice to these cases. Also, thanks to all of you who join me here. You know, I adore you. The case I'm going to cover today has been one that's received a great deal of press interest when it actually happened and onwards because of the lobbying that the wife who was left behind went ahead to try to change the law to ensure that individuals like her didn't to some degree suffer, as far as she is concerned, the same injustice that she felt she had when this case was tried in court. The case I'm going to be covering today is that of the death of PC Andrew Harper. This happened in the summer of 2019. It also involved a traveller site at 4 Horses Corner on Bergfield Common in Ufton, Nerva, which is a village in West Berkshire, and that would become a massive part of our nation's focus. Literally, the press were fixated on this area because of this crime. It's a local authority-run caravan and mobile home site which is owned by the council. To put it out there, it's a traveller community, and when we think about traveller communities, there is a lot of diversity. You've got new age travellers, you've got house travellers, people who might once have considered them of the traveller community but are now living in ordinary houses. And then you have sight travellers, you have showman travellers, you have people who still use the term gypsy travellers. And I'm using that because I think there's a real problem with the way that particularly middle-class white people like to decide what's appropriate language and what's not appropriate language. Believe me, when I work with travellers, which I'll talk about a little bit later on, they wanted to be known as gypsy travellers. It was not seen as a slur at all. Very, very proud people. And often people who get tarred with a certain brush, which is deeply unfair. But nonetheless, in this case, this traveller site was highlighted for all the wrong reasons. Now, the occupants of the site have recently moved off the land. It's just a temporary measure. They've not been evicted, and they've moved away because the council have got 22 months of major refurbishment works to carry out, and obviously they can't be there when that's going on. But back in 2019, 4 members of the local travelling community, which included 18-year-old Henry Long of College Peace in Mortimer, 17-year-old Jessie Cole of Paces Hill, Aldermaston, Reading, 17-year-old Albert Bowers of Windmill Corner, Mortimer Common, Reading, and 21-year-old Thomas King of Lane End, Bramley, literally would have the focus pretty much of the whole UK placed upon them. Now, these 4 guys would go out together very regularly, and not to just enjoy themselves frivolously by going out for a drink and dancing, for example, like young people do. No, these guys went out with one specific intent, which was to steal together. So this was not a peer group of possibility and potential in a positive way. No, they got up to no good. It's as simple as that. And Long and Bowers, 2 of them, that was pretty much their full-time job. That's what they did all the time. If those 2 were together and off the site, then the chances are that they were robbing people. Also, when they get questioned later on when the crimes have been committed, they did admit to often being in things like police chases, which are very, very dangerous. Cole specifically hated stealing alone. He used to feel quite scared of doing that. So the consequence was he would rope in his friend to do it with him. And they had a particular MO. Their thing was that they'd go out at night and they'd steal cars. They weren't the brightest individuals. And part of that, you could say, well, they didn't have a lot of education. And with respect, a lot of people who will know anything about traveller minority groups will recognise that they don't necessarily value education after 11. It's important to read and write. It's important to be numerical and know how to do your sums. But the rest of that experience educationally isn't valued as it would be if you were in the general population. So often this means that they don't have an academic, intellectual take on the world because they haven't had the opportunity to develop that skill. But they're very street smart a lot of the time. You know, travellers are incredibly bright and are very entrepreneurial in many ways, but these guys weren't. They kind of struggled per se. So even though they were carrying out crimes, they weren't highly sophisticated in doing that. That noted, because they constantly did these crimes, they did have a system. They had an organised system to some degree when it came to stealing. And the way that they'd do this is they'd acquire a cheap, fast car, you know, pick it up off Facebook Marketplace or off Auto Trader, private seller, you know, a car that wasn't up to much, but obviously could be used for a short period of time, as long as it was fast. And that was the key. So picking up a cheap car, bit done in, but very fast was effectively the thing that they would always go for. They wanted to make sure as well that they weren't connected to that car by registration or insurance. So they would literally just buy it. They wouldn't be filling in any of the forms for new ownership, and then they'd just take it to use in crimes. They also had this particular desire to steal quad bikes. And the reason for that is likely because they could have quite a lot of fun, cause havoc. And also, I think that quad bikes are really intimidating. I don't know about you guys, but if somebody's driving a quad bike down a main road, which is illegal, there is a level of intimidation to that. But there's also a recklessness. Quad bikes are really dangerous. And I suppose as well, it could easily be sold to other young people. So it gives them an opportunity to have fun with them, also be a little bit intimidating, be reckless, get that adrenaline going, and of course then pass on those quad bikes, probably at a very low price, but nonetheless relatively easy to get a few bucks in your pocket, so to speak. Now they would use the car to tow that quad bike, and that kind of makes sense because there might not be petrol in a quad bike, they're very noisy, you don't want to alert attention in the dead of night to one, and it gives them an opportunity to remove the quad bike they're stealing from the scene of the crime. Now, what they would do, should they be stopped by the police, is the driver of the quad bike, because what would happen is the car in front would tow them, they'd have the quad bike connected, and whilst it wouldn't have the engine going, they would be somebody driving the back of it so that it was going in the right direction. They would be steering the quad bike. And so if they were stopped by the police, the driver of the quad bike would untie the rope, jump into the car, and then they would just leg it. They would hammer it, foot down on that accelerator, and drive at any speed, any way they could to get away. And they really didn't care about the impact of their driving on others. As far as they were concerned, they had one job to do in certain circumstances where they could potentially be caught, and that was to make sure that they didn't get brought to justice, and they would just do whatever it took to achieve that. And that's incredibly dangerous because, one, we have a very fast car. Two, we have individuals who really don't care about other people's safety on the road. And most importantly, we have the adrenaline and cortisol that is rushing through those individuals' veins as they're trying to escape being caught by the police. Now, another one of these characters, Long, well, he was a serial burglar. He left school at 12 years old, and again, he almost followed perfectly in the footsteps of his father and grandfather. They were both involved in crime, and it was almost like he graduated to do the same. Literally, Long's only source of income was stealing. There was no job, there was no opportunities. As far as he was concerned, that was his career. And he came from a family of career criminals. He had literally never, right up until when he was caught, done an honest day's work. And his attitude was one, and I will talk about their attitudes later on, but his attitudes towards work was that he shouldn't have to. He also had previous convictions for battery, being drunk and disorderly, and shoplifting. So this is an individual who really doesn't care about being pro-social at all. He has obviously had a permission base. When you grow up with a parent and a grandparent who act the same way as you're going to act, you think that that's normal. But also, it says something probably about their genetics and their social experience, because they have the opportunity to follow a parent who gives them a sense that this is an acceptable behaviour. And of course, in this case, we have 3 generations. Now, the 4th member of this group, Bowers, was also no stranger to police, had a string of previous convictions, including making racist threats, battery, criminal damage, sexual assault, and having an offensive weapon. So he sounds like an absolute delight. These group of individuals really do sound like the kind of people that you'd have round to a garden party or a barbecue, because of course they would be trustworthy and you wouldn't have to worry about them fighting or attacking your neighbours, for example. Now, Cole didn't have any previous convictions, and he said that he'd only recently met Bowers and Long, so he was somebody who recognised that he hadn't got a long history of offending, and it certainly seemed to be that when he met Bowers and Long that this started to become a problem. Bowers and Cole, it's also important to mention, suffer from serious learning difficulties. They both work for their fathers, but that in itself obviously brings some vulnerabilities to their nature and maybe makes them see the world a little bit differently from you or I, but certainly should not result in criminal behaviour at all. So, 4:50 p.m, 15th of August 2019, Long, Bowers, Cole and King arrive at Privet House. This is a remote property basically in Bradfield, Southend in Berkshire, and it's the home of Peter Wallace. The reason that they had scouted out that home is he had a £10,000 Honda TRX 500 quad bike, which is a really good quad bike, and they planned to steal it. As you know, they might not have been the brightest and sharpest tools, but they were relatively well prepared. So they'd stolen a tow rope the previous night, and they'd also gone with their MO. They'd acquired a Seat Toledo to tow the quad bike away. They'd even attached the tow rope to the boot hinge so that they were ready to actually get the quad bike on there. Now, as they travelled to the destination, they were playing really loud music, and the car was in a relatively poor state, and that gives you some kind of insight into what was going on in their minds, because if you're going to commit the perfect crime, firstly, you don't want to draw attention to yourself, kids. So playing really loud music in a bit of a battered car at high speed is likely to cause a stir in said area, meaning people can point you out if you do something. How to get witnesses? Make sure they hear you and see you. So they're not thinking it through, but nonetheless they are prepared. And I also wonder whether part of this was a psychological challenge that they wanted to put out there. Like, they weren't concerned about what the police thought of them. They didn't think that they were going to get caught. They had a plan to escape and so on and so forth. So there was a level of arrogance within their actions. Now, you will be unsurprised to know that when they arrived at Mr. Wallace's to steal £10,000 Honda quad, Mr. Wallace is like, you guys, with the loud music and the battered car and the tow rope coming to my property, do one. So obviously they kind of get caught red-handed preparing to take the quad, and he essentially chases them off verbally and they go away. But this hasn't actually put them off. And again, this is pretty unusual, because if you've turned up at the scene of a potential crime and you have a witness in the owner who's basically confronted you and you've left, the last thing you want to do is return there, because that shows a massive level of either complete superiority and arrogance or a high level of absolute stupidity per se, because that's not psychologically what I'd expect to see. You'd go and scout out some other quad to take because there is a stronger opportunity for you to be identified. But no, they didn't get that memo. Not that I'm suggesting, guys, that any of you need to take tips on how to commit crime from me. I'm just saying it's not the brightest thing to have done. So then Long, Bowers and Cole plan to go back a second time. And the way that they plan to increase the potential of them actually getting away with it, they firstly disable the brake and rear lights of their Seat. This is done after dark. The reason that they do this, even though you're probably thinking, well, why would they do that? It doesn't make sense. That's a little bit dangerous. You need to be able to see somebody's brakes when you're driving behind them. You do. And if the brakes aren't working, what's that going to do to you? It's going to make you resistant to go fast because you aren't sure if that car is slowing down, and that means that you're in danger. And the problem here is that the police have a duty to protect us. So if the police are chasing a car and the lights aren't working, they hang back because they have no way of knowing whether it's braking, and obviously that can cause harm to them and harm to the people in the car, even though those people are criminals. So it's quite clever to do that. So they are obviously imagining that there is a possibility that they're going to end up to some degree in an altercation with police. At 11 p.m, 3 of the teenagers, that's Long, Bowers and Cole, return to Privet House. This is obviously, as I said, to steal the quad bike. Now King doesn't join them at this time, so he hasn't come to take the quad with them. The guys are armed with an axe, crowbars and a length of pipe. That is serious equipment. I mean, I appreciate that many of us would say, well, they are going to steal a quad bike. They're not intentionally looking to harm somebody. But as far as I'm concerned, the minute that you take an axe, a crowbar and a length of pipe, you have the potential to kill somebody. And even if your intention isn't to do that, all it takes is for somebody to confront you or to get aggressive with you, and suddenly you take something that you've brought to intimidate and you use it with the potential to defend in your mind the opportunity to protect yourself. Of course, the reality is that the person who's confronting you is in the right because you're the one threatening them with an axe. But you feel a defensive mechanism in that respect, and that can mean that you attack. So you're armed and you're dangerous, and essentially you have the power there to kill somebody. So whilst they're saying that they're going to just steal, the chances are that anybody who gets in the way could ultimately come to really, really severe harm. Also, wow, intimidation central, they're dressed in balaclavas and gloves. So if you imagine seeing somebody doing this on your driveway, how likely are you going to go out? I mean, you can replace items, can't you? You can replace a quad, you can't replace a limb, and you certainly can't replace a life. So even though the whole group of guys who turn up this way are aware that Mr. Wallace is literally at home, because his car is still in the driveway, they don't care. But this group of what I will suggest we could call thugs don't actually care. And they're just going ahead with the theft. So they rope the quad bike handlebars to the rear of the stolen Seat with the tow strap that they've prepared, and then Long drives the Seat whilst Cole gets onto the quad bike. Now at 11:17 p.m, so during this theft, Mr. Wallace sees this happening, calls Thames Valley Police and says, I've got 4 masked men outside my house and they've got weapons. Also explains that they've been at the property earlier in the day and he wants to go and confront them. Of course he does. That's one of the most normal reactions when you see somebody stealing something from you. Even though they're armed and dangerous, you cannot help but have that natural reaction, that territorial response to just want to go and stop them. This is mine, get off it. But clearly he would have been in an incredibly dangerous position. And even though he tells the call handler, I'm going to go and confront them, they say, look, stay inside. And absolutely, that's the right thing to do.
Thames Valley Police, what's your emergency?
I've got 4 masked men outside my house and they've got weapons. They came round earlier and now they're in my they're at my property in Stamford
And
Dingley.
what weapons have they got?
Handheld things, they're all masked.
And what's your name?
Peter Wallace.
And your postcode?
RG7 6JP.
And what number are you?
I'm at Privet House. It's not a number. It's
Privet House.
Privet House.
Yeah. And what weapons did you say?
I saw them handheld things a moment ago. I don't know whether they're coming to break in this house. I don't know whether they're coming, but they're. Yeah. Can you please send someone?
Are they trying to get into your property?
They are gone into break into something. They're trying to get into my garage or something.
Is that them I can hear in the background?
No, that's me shuffling about trying to see them.
And when did you see them before?
Well, I saw them before at 5 o'clock, but that's they come back in a different car, I presume.
And what do you think the weapons were?
Oh, just a handheld piece of wood or something. But I think they're just breaking into my garage to nick my stuff, eh? And they're quite threatening outside. I presume they know I'm in here.
Can you get the registration number?
I've got GK53, I thought, but they came in another...
And when you said masks, are they...
Hey?
Masks, what do you mean? Are they faces covered?
They've got their faces covered, gloves on, hats on.
Are you at home alone?
Yeah. Oh, and they're stealing my quad bike. I'm going out there now.
No, don't go out there.
I'm going out there now.
No, because if they've got weapons...
Yeah, I don't care. I've got to protect that bike. They're taking the quad bike.
No, your safety is important. Stay in your property.
Please send someone. I'm going
Someone's
out
on their way. No, don't go out there.
Have you sent someone or not?
Officers are on their way, but you can't go out there.
I'm going.
If they've got a weapon, then you'll be hurt.
Well, there's all sorts of bits of wood out there. They could pick up anything, but they're not taking my damn bike.
You need to stay in your property.
Taking it.
Does it have a registration number? Peter, does your bike have a registration number?
No, they tried to take the bike. They can't take it. They're going, I think.
Can you see their vehicle?
I don't know what they're doing. They're going to come in here and ram the car.
Can you still see them outside?
They're going to drive into my property and ram the I don't know what they're doing.
Can you see what make and model the vehicle is?
No, it's GK53CYG. Yeah, they're backing in. They're backing into the property now. This is bad. They're going to try and come in here.
Are you able to get into a safe location, into a room?
No, not really.
Do you think they're trying to get into the vehicle to ram your property?
I don't know quite. I don't quite know. They tried to lift the bike and take the bike, and now they're pondering what to do. And I'll tell you what, that's not going to turn out well for me. I hope someone's on their way.
We've got several officers en route, okay?
Obviously, the call handler then connects with the police, lets them know that there is an ongoing theft in progress and there are potentially armed and dangerous men involved. PC Andrew Harper and PC Andrew Shaw respond to the call. Now, they are already nearby in an unmarked BMW because they've just finished a surveillance shift in Reading 4 hours earlier. It was 7 p.m. that they'd finished, and they were literally on their way home. It was well beyond the end of the shift. They didn't have to respond. But they did because they believed it was their duty to protect life and to protect property. And that instantly gives us the insight into these men's attitudes, their professional conduct, their desire to be what I would say everyday heroes, genuinely. They didn't need to go. They could have gone home and got on with their lives. And I'm sure that a lot of people who know and love PC Harper absolutely wish that they had. But that wasn't in their mindset. What mattered to them was crime and disorder being met with justice and punishment. And so they attend. PC Harper, by the way, was better known as Harps. I'm going to say that because I think it's really important that I just don't refer to him as the professional. I'm using PC Harper because this is really telling. This was a man who was here to serve and protect us and essentially gave his life for his duty. And so I want to honour him by giving him his title, but also I want to bring in the humanity because he was known as Harps to other people because he was just such a really lovely, warm, gorgeous man who everybody who knew him felt was just a true gentleman. He was described as a gentle giant. He was described as a man with a heart of gold. That was by his wife. He was over 6 foot tall. He was 14 stone, so he was a well-built man. And tragically, he'd been married only 4 weeks when this crime took place. He'd married 28-year-old Lizzie Beckett. They'd been together for 13 years. 13 years. They were childhood sweethearts. And the main focus of that month, aside from having got married 4 weeks earlier, was the fact that they had so much to look forward to. And one of those things was they were going on a honeymoon later that month. So they were gearing up to go and celebrate the very start of their new chapter. PC Harper Harps was a rapid response Thames Valley Police traffic officer. He was based in Abingdon Station and he'd only joined the policing unit 6 weeks earlier. This was all new to him. He had literally always wanted to be a police officer. In fact, he was so committed to the idea of becoming a police officer full-time that he even became a special constable at 19. Now, I don't know what you were like at 19, but the last thing I was thinking of doing was volunteering as a police officer, as a special constable. I was at the pub. And that lasted quite a long time. Definitely past 20, which is when he joined the actual police. So this is a real character of an individual who genuinely saw himself as somebody who wanted to look after his community. He wanted to belong to the force. He knew his own mind and he pursued that course of action successfully. So he has determination as well as bravery. So now PC Andrew Shaw and PC Andrew Harper have been called and said that they're going to attend. They proceed down Admore Lane. It's a narrow country road. About 11:28 p.m, they come face to face with the headlights of that stolen Seat coming the other way. Now they can see immediately that this is the group that they want because they can see that the quad bike's being towed. And the vehicles come to a halt about 5 meters apart. Cole, at this point, is on the quad bike. He's steering it as it freewheels behind the Seat on tow rope so that it doesn't go off the road. And it's at this point the officers switch their blue and white lights on to let them know that they are the police. Andrew Harper gets out of the police BMW and he runs towards the Seat, which again, I don't know how you would be in that situation, but the very fact that PC Andrew Harper gets out of that vehicle, doesn't have to think twice about what he's running towards. He just knows he's got to make arrests and he doesn't think about his own safety. He's just concerned about what's happening and making sure that criminals don't get away with what they're doing. And he just runs towards that Seat. Now the teenagers we know have got this plan, right? They implement that standard escape. They unhook the quad bike, they pick up Cole, and then they make their getaway at speed. And when I say at speed, I mean these guys literally put their foot down on that accelerator to the bottom. Those vehicles, so the police car and the Seat, they remain stationary for less than 10 seconds before the Seat sets off. So the police officers in this moment in time, they're quite blindsided, of course. This is all playing out very quickly. So just to go through again how they managed this system to make sure that the car became separated from the quad bike. Initially, Long gives the order. Bowers passes it on and Cole obeys. So he unhooks the tow strap from the quad bike, runs after the Seat. It mounts the verge basically to avoid the police vehicle. And then he jumps through the passenger window. This is as the car moves away. And he's shouting, "Gathers, drive, drive." That's what's heard. Long drives at speed, absolute speed, southeast on Lambton's Hill. As Cole dismounted the quad bike, PC Harper is in pursuit of him. He's actually almost caught up to him. So he's in between the quad bike and the Seat as the vehicle sets off and manoeuvres around that police car. And he's so close to the Seat that the occupants absolutely, without a shadow of doubt, must have seen him. Now, remember, the tow rope is still attached to the boot hinge and there is this loop of rope and it's trailing on the ground and it's being dragged behind the Seat. And tragically, in a sliding doors moment, PC Harper stepped with both feet into the rope loop and he becomes entangled. It's like a lasso. And because it lassos around his ankles, and I'm sure you'll have seen in some Western movies where a horse is galloping and somebody has their feet lassoed and they're just dragged. And essentially this is what happens, and PC Harper is dragged along behind the Seat as it's making this incredibly high-speed getaway. And it happens in a matter of moments. Andrew Harper would not have known what was happening, literally. He's there trying to prevent the scene of a crime playing out further, trying to stop these men from getting away. And then suddenly, without being aware, he's on the floor being dragged high speed by this car. Now, PC Shaw, he's watching this play out. He's in his BMW and his headlights are on. And bear in mind, this has happened so quickly. It's also recorded on the car's dash cam. So he sees his colleague, his friend, fall to the ground, and he described it as like watching a water skier before being dragged completely out of his view, because the Seat drives past him on the verge and then goes. And PC Andrew Shaw actually described what he saw. He said, feet whipped forward and you land on your back. That's how Harps fell. So at first, PC Shaw actually believes that Andrew has just fallen. He doesn't realise he's been dragged. And at this point, he's just worrying about going and following the car. So he reverses his vehicle up Admore Lane till he finds a spot where he can turn around, and then he starts to follow the Seat. As he starts to follow in pursuit, he starts noticing that his vehicle camera's picking up debris littered all over the road. Now that debris actually turns out to be items of kit and clothing belonging to PC Andrew Harper. He's been dragging along the road, and obviously that's meaning that items of clothing and items of kit are just coming off his body. At one point, PC Shaw stops because he realises that his colleague's stab vest is literally lying in two parts in the road. All the while, obviously, he's communicating on his radio whilst pursuing the Seat. And it's at this point, he basically explains he's lost his crewmate. And I can't imagine the level of panic and complete confusion that's going on for PC Andrew Shaw. This has happened in a matter of moments. And this dawning realisation that PC Andrew Harper hasn't just fallen over, and that actually there is a strong potential that PC Andrew Harper is in grave or mortal danger, is starting to dawn on PC Andrew Shaw. And these are individuals who spend time together, they're friends. We already know about the mindset of this couple. As far as their work is concerned, they prioritise it over everything else, you know, aside from their personal relationships. When they are working, even when they are off work, they are still fully committed to the job. And I imagine that he must have felt absolute horror when he realises that his close colleague is somebody who is now in terrible danger. Now, another officer, dog handler PC Christopher Bushell, well, he's heard PC Shaw's radio message, and he's at this point parked in a lay-by because he's waiting for the defendant's car to pass. Meanwhile, Long and two accomplices, they're continuing along Admore Lane and onto Ufton Lane, and they are still dragging PC Harper behind them. And to give you an idea of the speed that that group were travelling, well, they averaged a speed of around 42.5 miles per hour on incredibly dangerous country roads. In fact, they reached speeds of 60 miles per hour. And when they were reaching those speeds, let me bring it to you, the fact that they were swerving the car violently. And they were doing that because they were trying to shake off what they had picked up, essentially. So PC Harper is attached to this car. He's being dragged for a long distance at incredibly high speed, and they are aware that there is something heavy attached to their car. They're also aware that the last time they saw PC Harper, he was literally next to the car, and then suddenly they have this dead weight essentially being dragged along. And they're not getting out to check what that is. No, they're just moving the car from side to side, swinging it like a pendulum. PC Andrew Harper was flayed alive by the surface of that remote country lane. Seriously, flayed alive. Imagine what that would be like on your skin. Now, before I go any further with this, I want to let you know that mercifully, even though he was being horrendously injured, it was established that he was probably unconscious pretty much immediately. That's really important because I think we're all at a point where even me describing the hideous injuries that this poor, incredible man was experiencing is really difficult to bear, let alone imagining that he was aware of what was happening. So this is what the coroner established, that the likelihood was that when he fell, almost immediately, he was completely unaware of what was happening. And that has to be the one thing that I take from this case, that as he passed from this life into the next, he was not aware of what was playing out. Now, when the police tried to recreate this crime, an advanced police driver, that's somebody who is so proficient that they're the individuals you will see weaving in and out of cars, going after criminals. These guys are incredible, and these girls are incredible who do these jobs. Even they took that journey 10 miles per hour slower than these guys did when they were escaping the crime. That demonstrates the level of absolute callous disregard that they had per se for other people's lives, including their own. And secondly, the fact that it was as if they didn't compute danger in the way that you or I would. It was more important to escape than it was to cause themselves or potentially other people injury. And the very fact that an incredibly well-schooled driver literally couldn't recreate it because it was too dangerous indicates that there was a recklessness beyond belief here. And I think that the fact that they were dragging PC Andrew Harper all that while just emphasises how reckless these individuals were. Now, when Long was asked about the fact that he was dragging PC Andrew Harper behind him, he was saying that he didn't really realise it was a human being, and all he was thinking was there was something connected to his car that he wanted to dislodge. So he was trying to swerve and make sure that he could dislodge it on the straight road so that he would get rid of it. Now, arguably, the thing here is that he could have got rid of it by just getting out of the car and loosening it. You know, if he was that convinced there was something causing a problem for him, pull over, release it, move forward. So I think it's highly unlikely that he didn't know what he was dragging behind him. But rather than stopping, he told Bowers and Cole to shut up and to turn the music up. So what does that say to you? Why would you tell your co-conspirators to shut up and turn the music up? One, if you're playing loud music, the chances are that you find it more difficult to concentrate on the road. If you've just committed a robbery and the police are after you, you're going to want your wits about you, unless there is a reason that you want to make sure that you can't hear something because it's worrying you as to what that thing may be. Unless you're aware that the thing that you are dragging behind you is actually a human being. And hearing it bang around is making you feel a little bit disconcerted and putting you off because you know damn well what you've just done. But arguably he's going to play that he didn't really know what was going on. Truth is, whatever happens in that, whatever meaning he's expressing, it doesn't really matter, does it? Because he didn't care whatever it was he was dragging. He didn't have a concern about it. He didn't stop to make sure that potentially it was or wasn't a human life. He just carried on. And at one point, Bowers is actually really concerned that the tow rope will actually get caught in the wheel. But nonetheless, as this chaos is playing out, Long then heads towards Ufton Court, but then gets stuck behind a wedding coach, which is going to be massively problematic because it slows them down. They then turn back and they arrive at junction with A4 Bath Road. At this point, they take a sharp turn across the A4 and they pass PC Bushnell's patrol car. PC Bushnell then gets to a fork in the road and looks to the right and sees this Seat driving straight at him. There were no lights on the vehicle, and he actually thought that they were going to ram him. So he then swerves his car to the left to avoid crashing. At this point, the Seat turns down another road and he loses sight of it. But obviously, what's just played out in front of him is horrific. And his main concern is going to be, what the hell has just come off that car? Is it a body? There's a witness, Jack Whittenham, that he'd been driving on the A4, and he described exactly what he saw. He said that PC Harper's body was dragged along the road, it hit the curb, and then it became detached from the Seat. And genuinely, when he was looking initially at what was happening, he thought that PC Andrew's body was actually the carcass of a deer. It was basically what he described as a bloody deer being dragged along, and he said it looked like a rag doll. Long drives at speed towards Four Horses Corner, and there are pursuing police cars at this point, reaching speeds of well over 90 miles per hour at times, but the Seat goes even faster. There's at least 2 road users who had to pull aside to avoid being rammed into, because these guys were not slowing down. They didn't care what kind of accidents they caused. All they cared about was getting away. Now bear in mind, PC Shaw at this point is kind of still dealing with the crime playing out, and he's reached the A4 and Ufton Lane. He's received this radio transmission from another responding officer warning of a body in the road. PC Shaw knew straight away. That was PC Andrew Harper. In fact, he had been driving along the road following a trail of road marks, of blood, and of body matter. When he found PC Harper's body, there was another officer, PC Andrew Kemp, tending to him at the time, and he'd seen the Seat drive across the junction at speed. He had thought initially, when he was looking at the scene playing out, that it was a car who had an ATM attached to it, a machine that you get money out of. And then it dawned on him, to its absolute horror, that it was a body, and he said it was tumbling in the road. To let you know what actually happened to PC Andrew Harper, he was dragged for over a mile. In 91 seconds, he was dragged 91 seconds. Just bring that into your consciousness, how long that would feel. You know, the impact that would have on a body. He was left with utterly horrific injuries. When he was found, he was completely naked, apart from his boots and his socks, because his clothes had obviously been stripped away by the road surface, and because his shoes and socks would have been slightly above because of the fact they were attached to the tow rope, they survived essentially. He was alive when they found him, and PC Kemp at this moment in time, all he wants to do is try to keep him alive, so he's given him CPR, he uses a defibrillator to try to save him. And then a paramedic arrives, that's Chris Darley, and he's watching this police officer doing his best to save PC Harper's life, but Chris Darley says stop. He instantly assesses the situation and says there is absolutely no way that PC Harper's injuries were compatible with life. In fact, he would later state, I thought it was unfair to carry on with CPR given what PC Harper had been through. So as a form of decency and compassion, he stops the CPR being performed and he allows PC Harper to die. The police officers who discovered Andrew Harper, they had to get help with trauma afterwards. It was so devastating for them. When they did the post-mortem, they established that he'd suffered absolutely appalling injuries, and one of them was a really severe brain injury. And likely when he actually fell initially and banged his head severely, that was when he went unconscious, and that was potentially where that injury had occurred. Now obviously, this is one of their own. I mean, the police care, of course, when anybody is killed. It's really important to them that they bring people to justice, but this is one of their boys. And they're the same when it happens to anybody in the force, whether they're on active duty or they're working in an office role. Police officers care about each other. And the fact that somebody has killed one of them means that they're going to be even more diligent than they ordinarily are, of course. That's not to say, guys, that I'm saying they're not trying to be diligent elsewhere. I'm just saying, like anything, when we have a vested interest in something, we tend to be even more diligent than normal. It feels personal, right? It feels personal. This is personal to them. So their main thing is to find who did this. So they continue to hunt for the suspects. So the police helicopter gets directed to 4 Houses Corner Travellers site. So the helicopter has a thermal imaging camera, and they get to the site and they start circling it about 11:42 p.m. And at this point, the helicopter spots a very, very hot Seat on the Traveller site. So they immediately are able to identify that this car has an incredibly hot engine. They can also see a group of men gathered around another car in an adjacent lot. And when they arrive, they are met with an absolute wall of silence. No one would speak to them. In fact, to put this into context, they literally couldn't get anyone to talk to them, to the point where the way they dealt with it was they had to arrest everyone at the scene. Literally. Nobody would talk to them. Now, I appreciate all of that stuff. Snitches get stitches, and you shouldn't be a grass, and everything in between. I appreciate it, but no. You know, we're not talking about a minor petty offence. We're talking about the death of a police officer. We're talking about the loss of a newly married man. And the fact that they just close ranks and aren't willing to engage with the police, personally, I think that makes all of the 10 who were arrested completely culpable. I genuinely mean that. At the end of the day, if you are not willing to help bring to justice criminals who've done immeasurable damage, not just on that event, but previously, then you essentially are a criminal as far as I'm concerned. So 10 people between 13 and 30 end up getting arrested, and initially it's 20-year-old Jed Foster who's charged with PC Harper's murder. And the reason for this is because he has a message on his mobile which indicates that he may have been the driver. So clearly, in that moment, it makes him look like he's banged to rights. They've actually got evidence that this person is taking responsibility for the driving crime. Because the travellers are so unwilling to actually engage, they also decide that they're going to lock the site down. This gives them an opportunity to get the forensic team in, and then they can look for the evidence. At 12:50 a.m, PC Warren Mason finds Long and another accomplice in a caravan. He's arrested because one of the things that really strikes the officer is that Long and his accomplice are really calm and quiet. They're also fully dressed, and it's not like they're inebriated and they've been having a fun night in, and that makes him suspect that they've been involved in the crime. And when they arrest Long, well, he says, all we were doing was watching Fast and Furious DVD at the time of an incident. I know that it might not seem psychologically specific for me to drag in the Fast and Furious as an issue, but I kind of think that that's a bit galling. I kind of feel like he's almost taunting the police. Oh, I was just in watching Fast and Furious, where they race cars at ridiculous speeds and put people in mortal danger. I feel like that's a real way of taunting the police officer. Is it just me? It may not be. I might be the only person in the world that feels that way. I may be reading too deeply into this, but I genuinely think that. I think he's giving a message to the police officer, almost making fun of him. And I think that part of this is a bias that I've formed because I've done the research and I know what comes next and the way that they are around this case. But I genuinely think that he wasn't concerned, and he's kind of poking fun at the police by saying he's watching the Fast and Furious as the crime plays out. Now, bear in mind, for the police, in spite of the fact that they've got this horrific experience where they've lost a member of their force in the most terrible of ways, it is a relatively difficult case because they've got no direct evidence to link anyone to the vehicle or to the theft. Long, Cole and Bowers had worn gloves at every stage. There's no forensic, so to speak. The suspects aren't willing to talk. They wouldn't assist the officers in any way. The family and friends also acted in the opposite way that you're meant to act in helping the police. They completely frustrated the investigation. They would have absolutely nothing to do with it. Now, during this investigation, obviously PC Harper's funeral takes place, and that occurred on the 14th of October 2019. And let me tell you, hundreds of people attended. There were uniformed colleagues of his that literally lined the route of the funeral cortege. The coffin was draped in a navy flag with the police crest on the side. He was carried into Christ Church Cathedral in Oxford by 6 officers, and the nation, the entire nation, mourned the loss of a brave officer, son, brother and husband killed in the line of duty. And his wife of only weeks, Lizzie Harper, read his eulogy. And she said, "You used to tell me we were a team and that we would go through all of life's hurdles together. How I wish you were here with me now. The hardest challenge of all is losing you." It's awful to imagine this young bride this woman who'd spent half her life with her lover, weeks into being his wife, had had him taken from her in the most catastrophic and heinous of ways. The fact that they had such a short amount of time to experience their second chapter, you know, they had other chapters to come, no doubt, children, the winter of their lives in the end, all these things that we hope for in the relationships that we choose. And there he was doing the right thing, and there she was, stood as his widow, knowing that yes, he'd done the right thing, but it had cost them their future. Must have been an absolute blow. Obviously, the police are diligently exploring any information that is going to bring to justice the individuals absolutely responsible for this crime. And the breakthrough comes when they follow the analysis of mobile devices that they've seized from the traveller site. First of all, it's established that Foster, Mr. I've been involved in this crime, who's now been caught and is essentially banged to rights because he's basically admitted it, actually wasn't there. He wasn't in the vicinity of the crimes at all. He just wanted to play Billy Big Boy, and so it said it. So the charges get dropped against him. He'd just been bragging, apparently. What a weird thing to brag about, isn't it? What a strange thing to brag about. Oh, I'm the person who was involved in that horrible ordeal. But they do manage, with the mobile records, to establish that Long, Cole and Bowers were there. So on the 18th of August, all three are jointly charged with conspiracy to steal, murder and manslaughter. And the behaviour of these individuals is literally reprehensible all the way through this. It's not like I'm going to tell you now about how they realised the error of their ways and started to act in a respectful manner. They just don't have it running through them. Because when they were charged, well, Long basically complains that they were unfairly targeting travellers. Also said, I don't give a fuck about any of this. First of all, how are we unfairly targeting travellers when you were the people who carried out the crime and all your mobile phone records and data demonstrate that it was you who was travelling that path and the car was on the site where you left it or where you live? How is that us being racist? But nonetheless, that's what they start to draw out, this idea that they are a minority group who are being affected by the police. And don't get me wrong, travellers often meet a great deal of discrimination and prejudice, and that's not acceptable. But these are criminals. It's got nothing to do with culture. Now, in December 2019, King, remember the guy who didn't go back to the second opportunity of stealing that quad? Well, he does plead guilty to conspiracy to steal a quad bike, because obviously he'd been present when they tried initially to take that bike. Long, Cole and Bowers also at this point plead guilty to the conspiracy to steal, but they say, yeah, we were there, we did plan to steal, but we are absolutely not guilty of murder. So they say that as far as they were concerned, there was no premeditation and it wasn't meant to happen, and therefore it doesn't fall into the area of murder. January 2020, Long does plead guilty to manslaughter, but Cole and Bowers, well, they plead not guilty to manslaughter, so that case progresses to trial. In preparation for the trial, the police and the CPS have to go through hundreds of hours of CCTV footage, around 1,000 written statements. They compiled 2,000 exhibits. They analysed and downloaded information from 80 seized mobile phones, even though they never found Long and Bowers' mobiles. But nonetheless, you can see, can't you, the amount of care and attention that was given to this case. Thousands and thousands of work hours were involved. They really wanted to bring these people to justice. Now, when it gets to court, there are some issues because the original trial begins in February 2020, and of course, pandemic is really starting to ramp up. So mid-March, they have to abandon this trial at this point because of the coronavirus pandemic. The retrial then commences at the Old Bailey in London in June 2020. Measures at this point have to be put in place to protect the jury during the trial, because apparently threats are being made by people linked to the defendants. That in itself is utterly shocking. Witness intimidation is illegal. You can go to prison for it, and rightly so. It doesn't bother these group. It really doesn't. The relations and friends of this group of young men, they don't care. They want to intimidate. They are trying to make the trial go bad by making the witnesses and the jury feel that they cannot be involved for fear of their lives. But nonetheless, it carries on. Some details during the opening of the trial are actually so horrific, by the way, that PC Harper's family asked the media never to report them. They just didn't want the blood and guts of the case being brought out. And I completely understand that, because it isn't for the public domain. Even the stuff that I've talked about today is psychologically very disturbing. And that was PC Andrew Harper's last moments, and the family wanted to keep them private. So the media were asked not to really go into the gory details of what occurred. Like I said, the little bit that we know is too terrifying to imagine. And some of the jurors were actually so shocked that they were offered counselling before the trial even began. That was how damaging this impact was, that the jurors were utterly broken by what they saw. And I also want to bring in at this point the way that the defendants were acting, because there had been an earlier magistrates hearing and all of the defendants were just taking the mick. They were just clowning around in front of photographers. They were being really childish, they were being really disrespectful. They had absolutely no concern for the way that that would play out for the individuals who'd lost PC Andrew Harper. You know, that court case, magistrates onwards, it's about recognising the loss of a life, the loss of an innocent man. And these guys are just clowning around and acting like they don't have a care in the world, which demonstrates that they had a really poor understanding of pro-social norms. Because if you're acting like that in a magistrate's court or acting like that in front of a jury, it's not going to go well for you. Now, when it gets to the big trial and PC Harper's horrific injuries are being read out, 3 of the defendants are seen laughing and smirking. I think at this point it would be okay to just say, guys, shall we just go guilty now? Should we just throw the book at them now? And maybe the judge could literally at this point just like throw a book at them, you know, each of them. Just like on a fairground stall. You know, when you go and you get to throw things at people, maybe the judge could have created a new game, which is like books being thrown at criminals. That might be an effective way of ending this trial in this moment, because to watch somebody laughing and joking and smirking. So as you can imagine, the last reaction that any of us could have expected when they are reading out the horrific injuries that PC Harper has sustained is that the defendants would be thinking it was acceptable to smirk and laugh. It shows a lack of remorse and also would let the people around them realise that these are a group of people who genuinely think what they've done is funny. Also, when the prosecutor shows a juror police video of PC Harper being dragged to his death, Bowers fell asleep. I mean, disinterest is not the word, is it? You would imagine the adrenaline and cortisol would be running through their veins when that was happening, watching that. You'd be awake for it. Yes, you might be deeply uncomfortable, but you'd be thinking, oh my God, they're going to play this. This is going to make the jury recognise that I'm really guilty. No, just asleep, oblivious to the repercussions of his actions. And this is really difficult for PC Harper's family. You know, his wife and his family are there to see this play out. Lizzie attended every day of the trial, and she was accompanied by PC Andrew Harper's parents, Phil and Debbie, and his brother Sean. They were diligent and judicious in their concern for him. They were there all the time. The defendants were literally in court for half of the trial. They, in fact, spent the other half watching proceedings in a video suite at Belmarsh Prison because of all the restrictions and sanctions and so on and so forth. So, to some degree, Lizzie and her family didn't really get their day in court as they should have. Also, Bowers and Cole, they needed help of an intermediary to keep up with the proceedings because it seemed like they had no attention span. Apparently, they struggled to pay attention for more than 40 minutes at a time, which is weird considering they seemed to be able to pay attention perfectly well when they were stealing a quad bike and racing through the countryside at ridiculous speeds. But who am I to split hairs and question the reality of this belief system? So the prosecutors at this point are aiming for murder, of course they are. As far as they're concerned, the defendants had clearly carried out an act that had caused PC Harper's death. However, it's a bit difficult to prove this because you have to prove mens rea, which means guilty mind of murder, and that requires an intention to kill or to cause really serious bodily harm. Now, the prosecution, well, they feel that they do have that. They feel the defendants knew that P.T. Harper was ensnared in tow rope, particularly long, because they said that he would have felt the effect of dragging a 90-kilogram body on the steering. Remember, P.C. Harper was over 6 foot tall and he weighed 14 stone. So you're gonna know. I mean, think about it, guys. If you've got a can dragging behind you, you know that they're there. This is a 14 stone human being. You're going to realise that there is something serious impeding your travel. Now, when they did the reconstruction, they indicated that rather than stopping, the way that Long had dealt with that was to swerve in the road to try and throw PC Andrew Harper off. All that mattered to them in that moment was escaping. They wanted to carry on happily living this consistent life of crime, and they were fully prepared to do whatever they needed to get away with it. You know, they got into a police chase and they drove away, going any way necessary to escape. They literally cared not at all for the lives of anyone who got in their way, including police, including anybody actually who got in their path. Now, during the cross-examination, Long kind of admitted that he recognised that he had experience of outrunning the police, that he knew that he could get away with those things, that he was also prepared to take extreme risks to do so. And he also was able to acknowledge that whilst he was happy to put the members of the public's life at risk, he knew that members of the police couldn't do the same. Now, the defence, of course, aren't going to agree with that. They say, no, this was a freak event. None of them could have planned or foreseen it, and that they were completely unaware that PC Harper was caught in the tow rope. So they say it was just an accident, so to speak. Also worth noting that just before the jury went off to deliberate, one young female juror was discharged literally the day before the jury reached a verdict. And the reason for this is she was seen by a prison officer to smile and mouth, "Bye, boys," to the teenagers in the dock, a day before they were meant to give the verdict. I mean, she's one of those, isn't she? She's one of those who's like, don't have a lot of luck with guys. These all look like they're going down. Maybe I can pick myself up a boyfriend. She's the kind of person who would pen pal Ted Bundy, isn't she? There are always a few people who fit that category, and clearly they've been unlucky enough to enlist her as the jury. And it's a good job that that female juror was recognised as having that kind of odd relationship with the boys, because to some degree, the jury effect says that if you have a really strong participant who refuses to say that people are guilty, you can sway the jury to agree with you. So she gets kind of ejected, shall we say. Now, the 24th of July 2020, this is after 5 weeks, and to be honest, quite a long deliberation. It was 12 hours of deliberation, which surprises me, because genuinely, I think if I'd been part of that jury, I would have been like, I think these guys are guilty. But nonetheless, they took 12 hours and they found Long, Cole and Bowers not guilty of murder. Not guilty of murder. Now, the 3 defendants weren't in court for the verdict because there were no vans available, because of course, everyone was in quarantine, weren't they? So the normal procedures just don't happen. So they're listening via video link, which I think makes it very easy for them to some degree. I don't really feel like you're in trial if you're actually just sat somebody listening to it. It doesn't make it very real, does it? It's not a shame inflicting. People can't see you and judge you as you deserve. But at the point that this is read out, that they're not guilty of murder, the defendants' families who are in court, will they cheer? In fact, the defendants' group of supporters wept tears of joy, hugged each other, patted each other on the back, and that drives me mad. Have some respect. Like, the group of defendants are guilty of something. They may not have got the murder conviction, but they killed somebody. Why are you cheering? Why are you joyful? Why are you wiping tears of joy? Why are you patting each other on the back? What are you doing? There's a man dead. There's a young grieving widow who's had her future stolen because of the actions of your relative and friend. You're disgraceful, utterly disgraceful. And no wonder you've created these horrors, these examples of what no one should aspire to be. You're as guilty as they are acting that way, in my opinion. I think the psychology of being happy in a moment of absolute sorrow associated with the loss of life demonstrates a callousness beyond reason, in my mind. PC, Andrew Harper's wife, literally broke down. Lissy was crying her eyes out. And understandably, lots of people who were there were totally blindsided, totally shocked, totally angered by the verdict. You know, as far as they were concerned, this is a murder case. She even went on to later post an open letter to Boris Johnson, Home Secretary Priti Patel and former Labour Home Secretary Lord David Blunkett on her Facebook page. And it was all about urging the government to intervene and to right such a despicable wrong for our country. The prosecution, in spite of them trying, they'd failed to convince the jury that Long knew he was dragging PC Harper. They accepted that PC Harper died as a consequence of the unlawful acts of the defendants, but they couldn't be sure beyond reasonable doubt that the defendants intended to kill anyone or to cause anyone really serious harm. Bowers and Cole, well, they were found guilty of lesser offensive manslaughter. Remember, Long had already pleaded guilty to this. Specifically, it was unlawful act manslaughter. This means any unlawful act by defendants, in this case, the theft and evading arrest that causes death. The judge would later state, here, death was caused in the course of an unlawful act which involved a deliberate and premeditated intention to drive, if accosted by the police, in a way which was reckless as to whether the police officers died or not. However, whilst murder cases carry mandatory life sentences, the issue is that manslaughter only carries discretionary life sentences. And it's basically up to the sentencing judge to decide the appropriate term. So on the 31st of July 2020, the defendants are sentenced. PC Harper's wife, Lizzie, read out an emotional victim impact statement. She broke down twice while she was reading it. She said, "My husband was brutally killed 4 weeks after our wedding day. Should I speak again of how we were robbed of our future or the plans stolen from us? 4 weeks was all I had with my husband. 4 weeks to be called his wife. My life often feels bleak, hopeless, irreparable. Every aspect of my life since Andrew was taken is bitterly different. They took more than one life away that day. They stole the person I used to be. Every ounce of beautiful peace gone. In answer to the question, how has Andrew's death impacted me? You can be satisfied. I am now a shadow of the person I once was." I mean, that is just blow to the stomach, isn't it? Totally understand. I think any of us who have lost somebody that we adore, it changes you. It gives you a different presence as a human being. You're not the person that you were before that loss. And when you go through a traumatic loss, it transforms who you are. It's hard for people to understand that, but you literally feel like you're looking at a different human being in the mirror. As she lost all of that and her future, there were children who were no doubt meant to be born. There were grandparents who were no doubt meant to feel the warmth of the children that were born to them in their arms. And that was all taken. Judge Mr. Justice Edis said, "Nothing which I can do or could have done if there had been a conviction for murder can restore Andrew Harper to his loving wife and family or to the public he served so well. His devastating loss in these terrible circumstances will follow his family forever, and they have the profound sympathy of the court and the whole nation in their loss." They're really powerful words, but like he said, none of them bring any comfort to the loss of this incredible man. When we look at the aggravating factors in this crime, wow, incredibly aggravating factors. And in fact, the judge stated that these were highly culpable cases of manslaughter. So let's look at those. So PC Harper was a police officer. He was killed whilst performing his duty and protecting the public. His death occurred during a commission of a criminal offence, i.e. the theft of a quad bike. They showed blatant disregard for safety of others. And PC Harper, who was very close to the getaway car when it set off, meaning that they knew that they could have caused some serious damage to him because he was literally next to them. Also, they could have affected any other potential road users or pedestrians. They could have killed anybody. There had been attempts to conceal evidence to try to deflect the police from recognising it was those who had carried out the crime. Also, Long and Bauer's mobiles were never recovered, as I said, so they obviously got rid of those. None of the group had shown any remorse. They were laughing, they were joking during the trial. They seemed completely unable to grasp the enormity of the actions and consequences. So these are really high-level aggravating factors, right? Let's look at the mitigating factors. Well, I suppose we can say the defendants are quite young. They were teenagers. Also, there were early guilty pleas to the conspiracy to steal charge, so they took some responsibility. And we can also say that Long did enter a guilty plea relatively early to the manslaughter. So they're the mitigating factors, but they're a lot less than the aggravating factors, aren't they? When the judge comes to sentencing, he ultimately hands down prison terms totaling 42 years. Long is sentenced to 16 years, and the judge says, "Your own evidence shows that you are dangerous. I find it very disturbing. You value your ability to steal things and to drive away afterwards more highly than the lives of people who might get in your way to try and stop you, or simply be in your way through bad luck." Cole and Bowers, well, they were each given 13 years in the Young Offenders Institution. And again, the judge said, "You are both somewhat younger and you are not ringleaders. You also suffer from learning difficulties, which make you more likely to follow the lead of someone who is more capable than you." Still quite a long sentence. And King, well, he was sentenced to 2 years for conspiracy to steal a quad bike because obviously he wasn't involved in the crime that caused the death of PC Andrew Harper. In the summing up, the judge stated, "You killed a talented and brave young police officer who is going above and beyond his duty in order to provide a public service, and you did so because you had deliberately decided to expose any police officer who got in your way to a risk of death. You decided that your freedom to commit crime was more important than his to life." The sentences, I'll be honest with you, have been criticised as too lenient, and one of the biggest advocates of that was Lissy Harper. She was absolutely devastated and outraged by the length of the sentences that those young men received. So the case got referred to the Attorney General in August 2020 because they wanted to see whether that sentence needed to be longer. Meanwhile, as a counter to this, where Lissy and her family are obviously trying to make sure that the sentence is upped, Cole and Bowers launched an appeal against their 13-year sentences. They basically feel that those sentences are too long. Fortunately, in December 2020, the sentences are upheld by the Court of Appeal. Unfortunately for Lissy, trying to get these sentences increased didn't go ahead. So the Attorney General, Suella Braverman, was unsuccessful in the application to have them increased. Fortunately though, as we know, Cole and Bowers didn't get them reduced. In fact, the court concluded that the sentences were neither unduly lenient nor manifestly excessive. Cole and Bowers were also refused leave to appeal their convictions, so they can't do that again. They have to serve the sentences that they've been given. Now, following PC Harper's death and subsequent trial, there was a lot of public criticism of travelling communities. And there were things said such as these communities were inherently criminal. Jeanette McCormick, Deputy Chief Constable at the College of Policing, she stated that the broader link between crime and UK travel communities was not conclusive, no matter what people think. She said there is no evidence to suggest we have a disproportionately high crime rate around traveller sites. And I understand the need for them to say those things because up until 100 years ago, you could genuinely see signs in pubs saying things like "no Irish, no travellers, no dogs." Literally, those kind of signs existed. In fact, I worked with travellers when I was 26 for a few years. Loved that job, still in contact with many of them. And I had to go to a pub where they had a sign saying "no travellers allowed." We had to get that taken down. So prejudice is huge. And we don't want to be acknowledging that it's acceptable to pretend that travellers are all inherently criminals. It's simply not true. Also worth noting that the UK's traveller movement strongly condemned the actions of the 3 teenagers responsible for PC Harper's death, also condemned their lack of remorse, and very much brought out the fact that they couldn't stand the fact that these individuals were laughing during the trial. When I work with travelling communities, I learned so much. First of all, I learned that you can't just put one group, because they're living on a traveller site, together. There were English, Irish, Scottish, Welsh travellers, all with different experiences culturally. There were the showman travellers who basically have fairground rides and travel around with the fair. There were New Age travellers who live in buses in small communities. There are house travellers who have started living in the normal population but still hold true to a lot of their cultural beliefs. And the idea that these individuals are inherently criminal just is completely against the experiences that I had. Yes, most of them did leave school at 11 years of age, and it was something that I was meant to try to get them back into. But I'll be honest with you, it was because they were learning the ways of the traveller community. Like I said, a lot of them really held true, particularly on the settled gypsy traveller sites. And again, I use that word because that's the word that they would use. Those sites were spotless. The Crown Derby that was in the trailers, they had plastic all over the interior seats because they didn't want to get them dirty. They cleaned their trailers from top to bottom every single day. And yeah, they have some very clear cultural differences between mainstream society because they often get married about 16. They often have quite strong gender roles, but very many of these traveller communities are thriving, they work hard, they make a lot of money with racehorses and other things, and they live very much like you or I, above the law, very morally indeed. So my experiences were at a complete junction to the kind of conversations I've had about these criminals that I've been talking about today. And just to kind of recognise that there's been research done on this, in 2016, there's a study in one area of Romania. Obviously, Romanian gypsies are a part of the culture that is very much understood. You know, it's a part of their culture that they have these travellers who have these links with the Romani history. And they concluded that areas with higher Roma populations had lower levels of crime. So these ideas that Romani gypsies are criminals is just not true. And there is evidence to show that. But there's always a minority of individuals who give people a bad name, and then they're amplified, aren't they? That kind of idea around it. When you look at this group that I've talked about today, they were career criminals. Think about it. Long themselves said that his father and grandfather were thieves. That's what they did. And even though he came from a traveller community, well, there are loads of families that have third, fourth generation of criminals. It's the way that they run their lives. You can't look at that and believe that that's to do with the travellers. That's to do with career criminal families. We have them in every single postcode. It's as simple as that. So when you do actually find criminality in the traveller community, it's linked to the same issues that we have in the general population. So if there is poverty, if there is poor literacy, if there is poor health, poor job prospects, it's got nothing to do with ethnicity and everything to do with social experience and lack of opportunity, so to speak. Now, Romani gypsies and Irish travellers are recognised in law as distinct ethnic groups, and they're legally protected from discrimination under the Equalities Act 2010, which is really important because they have had their culture and identity decimated because of some of the laws that we've implemented to prevent people from travelling. So people stay at static caravan sites now in trailer parks, usually in not the nicest of places because they're literally not allowed to do what their culture used to be about, which was moving from place to place. I know that people have got horror stories about certain minorities of travel population turning up, taking over places, leaving an absolute disaster. They are such a tiny percentage, I cannot describe it. There are lots and lots and lots and lots of travellers who live very peacefully and very well on fixed traveller sites because we've stolen their opportunity to do what they once were allowed to freely do, which was to travel. Now in November this year, that's 2021, the year that I'm doing this right now, PC Harper's widow succeeded in a 2-year campaign to change the law. She fought long, she fought hard, and she fought in the midst of becoming a widow and losing the love of her life. That woman has got more resilience in her fingertip than I think most of us have in our entire bodies. As she managed to achieve this change in the law that says anyone who kills an emergency services worker while committing a crime will be given a mandatory life sentence. Harper's Law, the law named after him, will come into force via an amendment to the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Bill. It's likely to get royal assent and become law early next year. Incredible that she's done that. Absolutely incredible. Lissy stated, "It's been a long journey and a lot of hard work. And I know Andrew would be proud to see Harper's Law reach this important milestone." And I'm sure that wherever he is in that big, beautiful beyond, that's exactly how he feels about his beautiful wife, Lissy. But nonetheless, it's not going to make up for the absence of him for the rest of her life. I think that it's not just a man who we lost in our society. You know, it's not just a husband, a potential father, a child of parents, a brother. It's more than that. Because the thing about PC Andrew Harper is he had that hero genetic. He was that kind of individual that would run into the line of fire at a cost to his whole life just to protect the community that he wished to serve. And that is a rare quality. It's not a quality I think that I have within my nature, and it's certainly one that I think I want to represent to his. So we didn't just see a heinous murder here. We saw the loss of an individual with such potential that he had an impact on the world positively every single day of his life. And as I say, Lissy, to create that legacy, to be able to ensure that should anybody else go through the horror that she's gone through, that those people who are brought to justice will not see the light of day for a very, very long time, receiving an automatic life sentence for killing an individual who's on duty. And that spans not just the police, that's the fire, it's paramedics and so on and so forth. So Harper's Law will be law next year. I hope you found this an interesting topic to cover. I wanted to cover it because even though it's quite a complex case and it's very complicated, it's also demonstrative of our everyday heroes that sometimes we don't necessarily notice because we just take it for granted. And I think there is a place in my videos where I often call into account the services that are failing. I'll call the police into account. I'll call social services into account. But on this occasion, it's also good to recognise that there are so many amazing people serving our community. And without a doubt, PC Andrew Harper was one of those. And like I said, it's a really sad loss to our world, not just to his family, that he's no longer with us. Please join me again for another True Crime with me, Emma Kenny. If you like my merch and you want a hoodie, it's the new thing. It's a hoodie. Look, it's a hoodie. You can do that. Do I look like Eminem? I don't. Do I look like Eminem? No, I don't look like Eminem. I don't know why I went for Eminem. It's not got long hair for a start. But you can get them. The link's below. Thanks to my Patreon support. Really appreciate you. Join me on a Wednesday and Sunday. As ever, I will be here. If you've not done a live chat now, join me. It's getting bigger. It's fun. It's great seeing everybody there. Also, keep hitting me up with your recommendations for cases. I do listen. I've got a list the length of my entire house, and I will get around to them because I'm going to be around quite a long time. So I intend to be here when I'm like 96. I'll have had 9 facelifts. Everyone will be like, she looks great for 84. And that's the way I'm going to live my life. Peace out. See you next time.